I grew up sitting on the floor of my Nana's living room. Every Christmas holiday, every part of every summer vacation. She had one of those big old TVs that it was like a full piece of furniture in the center of the living room, and I would sit there all day long. During the week, I would sit and watch all the stories. Some of y'all might call those soap operas. And my aunts would take turns going in and out, whether their favorite story was on or not. And my mom and Nana would sit in the kitchen, drinking coffee and playing Scrabble. They weren't interested in the stories. But on Saturdays, Saturday afternoons, everybody came into the living room, and we started with American Bandstand, and we ended with Soul Train. And while my mom and my aunts and Nana were oohing and on about what kind of crazy acrobatics the dancers were doing or the crazy halter tops and bell bottoms, I was watching the band. I liked watching the backup singers. I mean, they were glamorous and beautiful and sexy, and they moved their shoulders and their hips, and they kept time. And the sounds that they made added to the complexity of the music. They added nuance. I grew up as a choir kid. From ages 8 to 22, I was in at least 3 choirs a year. There was the church choir. There was the school choir. There was the professional children's choir. And then when I was older, there was the Conservatory of Music in college. And even though I was a sometimes occasional soloist, my true identity was as a second soprano. I really liked singing the tones that made the warm major chords and the cool tones that made the minor chords, and then that little note that created dissonance. Being a part of a choir is kind of like being an ingredient in the cake, right? Individually, we're lovely and tasty, but together we're creating something that didn't exist before. What's that saying? The whole is larger than the sum of its parts, something like that. I grew up with so much music in my head. I thought that life was going to be like the musical soundtracks that I grew up with. The first innocent love that was in Greece. Or the need for free speech and freedom of religion, like Footloose. Or the need for birth control and reproductive rights and safe and legal abortions, like Dirty Dancing. I mean, that was my takeaway. I mean, that wasn't yours. Or how you could get caught up in the grittiness of the nightclub that you miss a friend's call for help, like Saturday Night Fever. Or all the challenges we have in our community, like classism and colorism and the tension around Black nationalism, like School Days. And all the challenges that we have in the weird dances that we call dating and the tensions between life's ambition and family needs, like Mo Better Blues. And of course, the ultimate need for forgiveness and redemption, like Purple Rain. And for the most part, that's true, right? Life has been like that. We can even throw in La Boheme a la Moonstruck and the global pandemic. And those have been my life lessons, and they've carried me far. Fast forward to this summer when I was a volunteer with the Democratic National Convention with the DNC. My role as a volunteer was in the mornings, in those very long 4 days that were 12, 16-hour days. I'd spend my mornings At my post, which was the delegates' entrance, I said hello and greeted everyone across the country. I offered, advice if they needed to get to the L or understand how to get around the city. I helped people get wheelchairs and navigate the conference floor. In the afternoons, because I had credentials, I was able to sneak into the caucus meetings and listen to Democratic pollsters, and they told us that this was as hopeful as 2008, and I believed them. In the evenings, I stood in the convention hall and I danced and bopped and yelled to the beats of DJ Cassidy and listened to every state pledge their support for our candidate. I was pumped. That energy, that excitement, that electricity carried me all the way through the fall. The night before election night, I was so excited. I asked Google and AI to give me the best playlist with freedom as the theme. And it gave back to me Beyonce's Freedom, which was the campaign theme song, John Baptiste's Freedom, which we just heard, which is my personal favorite, George Michael's Freedom, which is also another good one. And then it reached back to Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, and Nina Simone, Here Comes the Sun. I posted it on social media and I went to bed happy. Then the next night, I was ready to play my playlist. I got all my creature comforts, wine, pasta, pizza, turned on MSNBC, sat back, wait for the results to roll in. And my mood went from excited, happy, joyful, to shock and awe and anger, to disgust, to despair, to numbness. And my music stopped. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a soundtrack. And I don't know how to get it back. I think I need to find the drums. The drums of our ancestors. You know, the drums that kept us alive in the Middle Passage, that helped us communicate across tribes. The drums that were our bodies that created Jumba when they took our drums away from us. The drums that kept us going at work when we were being divided against each other and we didn't know who to trust. I think if we could find those drums, they could help us perhaps create new drums, create new rhythms that could give us sight and clarity, new rhythms that could give us strength and perseverance, new rhythms that could help us find light and freedom and peace. And maybe, just maybe, if we find those drums, if we create those new drums, my music will come back. Thank you.